Well, this is Baruch here. I'm at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and it's time for us to be looking at Jewish astrology, a cosmic science. Rabbi Yaakov Kronenbert wrote this book, trying to learn Jewish astrology. Now, picking up from where we left off before, remember yesterday that we were talking about the position, starting with your own position, and here's a person in this particular case is that his ascendant is pointing to Leo. He's a Leo. So by counting 10 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we find a career. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you find the opposite, which is Aquarius, is the opposite of Leo. And then you're counting another 10 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here we have, this is Scorpio. That's where you find the home, complicated home. So let's try to come over here and see what Rabbi Yaakov is saying now, because we may have a different approach. He says it's also recommendable to go through the zodiac in a backwards or clockwise way, the spiritual approach to the zodiac. Thus, the first house would fulfill itself in the fourth house. And now you're going backwards, and let's see if I can understand what he's saying. He's saying the fourth house, if we count going this way, right? So he says, I guess you got to go this way. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's the fourth house. And so therefore, this Leo would be able to find his home in Scorpio. Interesting. And then you count, let's see, we got to go the same direction again. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're back with the spouse again, which is the opposite. So you went two different ways. Let me see if I counted that right. Maybe I counted it wrong. Which is clockwise? This is clockwise. Okay, so I counted it right. Back to the seventh house again. Now let's see what we can understand about this. He says, let's see what it says. Thus, the first house would fulfill itself in the fourth house. So count clockwise, and you'll get to the fourth house 10 houses away. The fourth in the seventh, and then count to the fourth, it goes to the seventh in the 10th. In other words, if a person has a good spouse or a good partner, which is the seventh house, that would help his career, because the seventh house is also 10 houses away from the house of career. So let's count it again. Here's the seventh house. So using the clockwise way, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there you are at the 10th house, which is the house of this person's career. So he says, and there is an expression in America. So let me see if I skip something. Because the 7th house is also 10 houses away from the 10th house going backwards, and that is clockwise. And there is an expression in America, he writes, behind every successful man stands a good woman. In other words, if the 7th house is good, she is going to help the man be very successful. But today, it can be the other way around. Regarding gender types, the woman can go to work all day, and the husband will stay home in the house, take care of the cleaning, and look after the kids, and so on and so forth. So the wife doesn't have to worry about these things. It works both ways, but I am using the standard archetype right now, but you can understand it either way. Later, in other words, if the woman is doing the man's work and the man is doing the woman's work, it's still going to be the same archetype. Later in other lessons, we can talk about the horoscope of Eve and the horoscope of Adam and the differences. So remember that if a person has career trouble, you first look at the first house and then you look at the 7th house. Because these houses, the first house is the person himself. What kind of condition is the person in? Because these houses are the causes of a person's career. They determine if the person would be successful in his career or not. And the 10th house fulfills itself in the 7th house. So let's see the 7th house. How does that work? The 7th house is the house of the spouse. The 10th house is the house of career. So he said it's because if a person has a good destiny, a good career, then he will have a good life partner, which is in the 7th house. Usually there will always be somebody who would want to partner with a successful person, one who has a good destiny. In other words, his future looks good. They know that if you attach yourself to such a person who has a good future, the marriage partner will always be satisfied. So now you see again that if a person has some trouble in getting married, where do you look? You do not look at the seventh house. No, you don't do that, the house of marriage, but rather you have to look at the house which is the cause of the seventh house. What's the cause of the second house? And that is 10 houses before that, which is the 10th house. So the house of the career, the destiny. So if the person has trouble getting married, or marital problems, or whatever, then you have to look at the work on the person's work and work on the 10th house, the house of career, and get him to be more successful in his career. Now he's talking about an astrologer who is able to look at the nature of the tendencies of the person that they're dealing with and try to help him out to be able to move in the right direction. The house of career, and get him to be more successful in his career choice. And then it would be easier for one to get a life partner. So with this approach, forward and counterclockwise, it goes like this. Now let's try to see if I can get all of this together on the same page. Probably not, but let's see. The career, career choice. Then it would be easier for one to get a life partner. So it goes 1, 10, 7, and 4. So here's 1, right? Here's 1. Oh, here's 1. And then you count clockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the home. Now, what does he say? He says, let me see if I can get back to this. It says forward and clockwise. It goes like this. 1, if you have 1 and you count around, then you go to the 10th house, the 7th house, and then the 4th house. Now, if you switch to the backwards and clockwise method, spiritual, which is the mystical way. Okay, so now he's talking about, I see what he's saying. I got it. So the normal way is to go counterclockwise. So you would count here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it'll be the first house, the 10th house, count another 10, you get to the spouse, come another 10, you get to the house. But if you're going the other way, which is clockwise, then the pattern would be different. Now he says this is the spiritual way. Now you switch to the backwards and the clockwise method, which is the mystical way. It goes 1, so first you have 1, and then you go to 4, and then after that you count that would be going this way, and you get to number 4, that's 10. Then you would go another 10, and that would give you to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, back to the spouse, and then another 10 will bring you to the career. So let's see how this works. So he says, now if you switch to the backwards and clockwise method, which is spiritual, which is the mystical way, it goes first is the first house, then you count 10 clockwise, it gets to the 4th house, 10 clockwise gives you the 7th house, and 10 clockwise gives you the 10th house. So he says, so the 4th house is really the cause of the 7th house. So he says, so which in forwards or counterclockwise means this, material, it's in the 7th that causes the 4th. So in other words, that if you have a good spouse, it'll cause a good home. And this is a big difference. Now, let me see if I understood this. I don't think I understood it well. Put it that way. I understand how he's counting. He goes 1, and 10 from 1 is going to be the 4th. 10 from the 4th will be the 7th. 10 from the 7th will be the 10th. So he says, so the 4th house is really the cause of the 7th house. In other words, he says whatever comes first when you start the counting, that's causing what's coming behind. So he says, while in forwards or counterclockwise, which is really the material way of looking at it, it's the 7th house that causes the 4th. But in this case, it's the 4th house that's going to cause the 7th. And this is a big difference. The 4th house is the house of the home, the house of the family. And you see that in very traditional societies, like, say, Judaism, the first house fulfills itself in the 4th house, not in the 10th house. So if you're looking at it in terms of your overall happiness, then you're looking at going clockwise, and you'll see that counting 10 will bring you to the 4th house, not in the 10th house. So he said this is because in the Jewish religion, you have to look at these things by going backwards and clockwise with the chart of Adam Rishon. So we'll see how that works. So the first house fulfills itself and its destiny by having a home. The religious person, so looking at it in a spiritual way, sets a house based on faith in the nation of Israel. What in Hebrew is called Bonei Bayit Ne'aman B'Yisrael, build a house of faith for the Jewish people. And having married and having children is his man's main destiny for the happiness and the fulfillment of his life, if you look at it in this way, would be to keep the religious tradition and to raise his children, and to have children and grandchildren integrated into the people and religion. And that is the main fulfillment. So that you see by going clockwise, at least in a spiritual way. So if a person comes from a good family, he fulfills himself by being able to be attached to another good family, by marrying a woman who comes from a good family, which is the seventh house. You see that a lot. In ancient societies, they used to make matches. Let's see, I'm losing the place here. They used to make matches involving the parents. And even today, in some religious societies in Judaism, you see it a lot, that the parents have a lot to say in choosing the marriage partners. And families who come from the same background have more chances of success. Time-wise, we're going to stop right here. This is Baruch Fleischman at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and now we've seen some different ideas that have to be thought about and developed by us in this book, Jewish Astrology by A Cosmic Science by Yaakov Kronenbert.